what makes Google Cloud different? So first of all, it's the best-in-class security. Uh, Google has built its cloud bottoms up and an end-to-end stack purpose-built for cloud computing, which allows us control of the full stack and make it secure for our customers. Second is the hybrid and multi-cloud. We believe in enabling choice, and whatever might be the way that customers prefer to access these services, whether it's on GCP, in another cloud, or in hybrid environments, we strive to make that possible. We also strive to make our cloud as easy to use as possible and try to automate tasks such as configuration settings and just try to deliver experience where customers can focus on building and developing in the cloud. And AI and ML is part of Google's DNA, and that is something that we embed in our cloud computing services almost everywhere. And also, as I mentioned, we would try to bring the best of Google, the infrastructure, the services, the technology that powers Google services to our customers through GCP. We have, I think, over 7 services that have over 1 billion users. These are things like Gmail, YouTube, Google Drive, that the technology that powers these services is the same that is available to our customers through Google Cloud Platform. Our goal is to help customers through their journey, and different customers have different paths they prefer for that. So some customers may prefer to build new applications in the cloud. Some may prefer to migrate what they have on-premise into the cloud. And some customers may just prefer to go through a full end-to-end digital transformation, redesigning their business models and transforming their cultures. Our goal is to be the best partner for that journey, whatever journey a customer may prefer. But I also want to stress the point that we don't do this alone. We do this along with our partners, and this may include our system integration partners that help with deployment and building and helping customers build stuff in the cloud. And it may also include our strategic technology partners, like Actian. For the next slide, please. With our technology partners like Actian, we aim to build best of breed experiences, in this case for data warehousing, for example, and offer that to our customers to solve the use cases that they have. And now with that, I will hand it over to Emma to talk more about Actian, Avalanche, and GCP.
Great, thanks so much, Mavinder. That was really interesting. So, as I mentioned earlier, Emma McGradden, I'm not sure I mentioned I'm based in New York, and I am going to talk to you about Actian Avalanche. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Actian Avalanche is a hybrid cloud data warehouse. So, it's a fully managed cloud data warehouse service, and we've really focused on performance and in particular delivering exceptional performance at a low price point. So that price performance we think is a draw to the cloud, and the innovation that both Google and Actian exhibit I think are another reason to move to the cloud and kind of accelerate a digital transformation. But delivering high performance at low cost is something that we've built for, and that cost is something that we look to contain. So for instance, one thing we've seen in pretty much every deployment of the Avalanche Cloud Data Warehouse is that people want to enable all of the business decision makers inside their organization with access to all of the data that can help them make the best decision possible, right? So you'll go into a company and they'll have given Looker access to hundreds of people, right? So being able to support high concurrency, hugely important. And I think as companies become more data driven, right, that use of those technologies is going to grow. Which means that architecting for high concurrency becomes even more fundamental, and it's something that it's hard to build in after the fact. It was a design point for us. The hybrid deployment, as Mavinder pointed out, people are looking at cloud journeys from many different perspectives. There's the public cloud, which obviously is a big focus for us. There are private clouds, there's hybrid, there's multi-cloud, and we've built Actian Avalanche to be able to support all of those different deployment offerings or yes, ways to market. So for instance, with Google Cloud, we're working on both software as a service that will be delivered on the Google Cloud platform, but also a VPC. And if you're not familiar with the term VPC, essentially what we'll do is we can push the Avalanche Cloud Data Warehouse service into your Google tenancy, right? So it's running on your infrastructure. We'll still provide the management plane. So we'll manage this, and you'll see how cool that is in a few minutes. But the data would reside inside your infrastructure, and that is something that you'd engage with Google for. We also, continue to have some people that start their cloud journey with an on-premise deployment, or they have certain data that might be subject to regulatory compliance requirements, and that forces them to keep that data on premise, or at least their chief data officer would prefer that data remain on premises. So working with Google and Kubernetes and their Anthos deployment, we actually have the ability to take the same solution that's deployed in public cloud and through VPC and deploy that into your on-premises data center. So an amazing amount of flexibility afforded to us with the work that we're doing jointly with Google. And as I mentioned already, the TCO is hugely important, right? So we have focused on that, and we've got some evidence to bear that out coming up in a couple of slides. And where we've really focused and where we excel is in two areas. One is BI, very traditional BI, and the other is the operational analytics use cases, where you want to feed the transactions that are happening within your business into your warehouse and see that reflected immediately. So that kind of live access to data is very important to many of our customers. So we love Google Cloud. So we actually already have solutions available on AWS and Azure. So Google kind of rounds out the three main public cloud offerings that we're delivering. And one of the things that we've experienced with Google Cloud is that the way the network infrastructure has been implemented has really led us to deliver even better performance than we've seen on the other clouds. If you say you're fast, people will look for a comparison point, right? So when we say, we've taken a benchmark, it's the TPC-H, which is an industry standard decision support benchmark. It's not something that we wrote, right? This is something that the Transaction Processing Performance Council put together. It's supposed to represent a mix of medium and complex decision support queries. And we've executed that benchmark at a 30 terabyte scale with 5 concurrent users. We employed a third party called GigaOM to execute the benchmark because we wanted this to be fair. And they completed the query set that makes up the benchmark with Avalanche in 2054 seconds. Now, if I gave you that number, you've no comparison point for that, right? So what I've used here is Snowflake. The reason I used it is not because we like to beat them up, but because a lot of people have familiarity with Snowflake. And to run that same query set on an equivalent environment takes 17,000 seconds in Snowflake, right? So 8 times faster, more than 8 times faster than Snowflake to execute the query set. Now, if we look at the next graph on here, what you'll see is that the price to execute the 22 queries that make up this benchmark for the 5 users cost $145.31 with Avalanche, right? Again, without a comparison point, it's hard to tell is that a bargain or not. And for Snowflake, the same set of queries running on equivalent infrastructure took $931 worth of credits to execute that workload. So what you'll see here is that not only are we significantly faster, but we also are much more cost effective, right? So there's a price and a performance benefit to the Actian Avalanche technology. And we have commissioned this report through GigaOM that compares us with all of the most popular cloud data warehousing solutions. I'd invite you to visit our website where you can get a copy of that report. So getting on to the Google Cloud technology ecosystem, we are working right now to fill in all of the pieces in the circles here that are in blue. So let me explain what's going on here. At the center of my universe is this Actian Avalanche hybrid cloud data warehouse. And we've deployed that using Kubernetes inside Google Cloud. We also leverage Dataproc for doing things like Spark connections. So if you want to load the warehouse with data very quickly, Spark is definitely the best way to do that. One of the differentiators that the Actian Avalanche platform provides is a capability called Avalanche Connect. And this is Actian's data integration capabilities that are a natural extension of the warehouse, right? So once you set up a warehouse, the first thing you want to do is to bring some data in there. So rather than having to go to third-party technology providers to find technology that will enable you to bring data into the environment, Actian Avalanche has this Avalanche Connect capability that I'm going to demonstrate in a minute or two. That Connect capability gives you the ability to reach out to, let's say, data lakes. Maybe you've got Parquet files sitting on S3 that you want to bring into the warehouse. That Actian Connect gives you, or the Avalanche Connect gives you the ability to do that. And what we're doing as part of this Google integration effort is to add in support for Google Cloud Storage there. So our data lake set of technologies is expanded to include Google Cloud Storage. On the streaming side of things, we've got Kafka support today, and we add in support for Google's data flow and PubSub capabilities. So, what we're finding is that as people are deploying on Google, they want to take advantage of all of the various Google data-related services, and providing support for Avalanche in there is hugely important. So follows through here with Data Fusion for ETL, with Looker, which we'll demo for the business analyst, and then on the data ecosystem, we find that the data engineers like tools like Data Prep and Kubeflow for data engineering. Jobs.
That's a great point, Emma. One of the things we often hear from our customers is they're looking for a choice of platform where they can get multiple services and not have to move data across different destinations, because it's hard to do. And having Avalanche integrated with various GCP analytics services makes it sort of the destination where they can store and analyze and then do various tasks with their data.
Great validation. Thanks, Manvinder. We're certainly hearing it from our customers and our prospects. So we have at the moment an early access program that we're running, and it'll run through March. And with this early access program, what we're providing is a white glove service that gives you access to Actian Avalanche for free for the first 6 months of your deployment. So when you come into Actian Avalanche first, you'll see two main areas of focus. The first is our warehouses, and the second is our integrations. So if we go for the warehouses, you'll see I've created a warehouse here on Azure. We've got this running on Azure Data Lake Gen 2. If I want to scale my warehouse, I can simply move this slider, save that new warehouse size, and I'm ready to go with the ability to scale just the compute resources through our implementation of a separation of storage and compute. Obviously, the Azure one's interesting, but not nearly as interesting as what we're doing with Google. So if I come into my Avalanche on Google Cloud Warehouse, this is a small disposable environment that I created for the purposes of running quick demonstrations. So it's just got 1 terabyte of storage allocated for it. With all Avalanche warehouses, we are very focused on security and securing your data. So we have the concept of an IP allow list, and only the specified list of IP addresses or CIDR blocks are allowed with access to the environment. We also are cost conscious. So from the perspective of providing value for money, we want to make sure that when you're not using the service, that it would automatically shut down. So by default here, I've set up my environment with a 1-hour period of inactivity, after which that service will stop and save you some money. When I come in here, one of the first things I want to do is to start writing some queries, right? So we have built into Actian Avalanche a query editor, and we thought that it would make sense to include some sample data so that you have something to play with when you get your new toy. So what we chose was some on-time the on-time record set, which is many people are familiar with in the database world. It's a database of flight arrival and departure information, and most people focus on the delays and the source of delays, whether that's weather delays, equipment delays, and so on. So we've pre-populated the warehouse with some interesting data, and we've given you some queries here. So I like to play with the top 50 flights with the biggest average delays. So when I come in here and run this query, what you'll see is, see how fast that was? In 0.63 of a second, we had analyzed 7.2 million flight information records to understand where all of these delays were coming in. These tables are not particularly interesting to read, so we built in some basic visualization here. So I can say I want this to be a bar graph. I'm going to have my my airport code on one dimension, total arrival delay on the other. Now, when I run it and see this bar graph, by mousing over it, I can see what was the cause of the delay. So some fairly rudimentary querying capabilities with keyword highlighting and command completion and so on as part of it. The other interesting tab within Avalanche is the integrations tab. So if we start off here, we've got a desktop data loader. This gives me the ability to identify which of my warehouses I want to load the data into. I give it my username and password. Hopefully this isn't going to show you my password. Then I give it the name of a table that I want to load the data into. And then I just browse to a file. I will then drag that file over. Oh, come on. Yeah, this knows it's a demo. There we go. I can drag that file into the environment, and now it's going to be ready to load that data into my Avalanche warehouse. It'll do some really clever things like detect the field separator, detect the record separator, identify what it believes the quote character is. You've got the ability to override any of those, and then I can just upload the data into the warehouse, which is quite cool. Last piece of the demo then is the work that we've done with Looker. We do find that Google customers love Looker. And I think it's because it's fast and it's super convenient and super easy to use. So what we've done here is we've built out a Looker dashboard that shows a much more interesting representation of that sample data that's part of the Avalanche warehouse. So now when I come into Looker, you'll see we've got 7.2 million flight trips that we're analyzing in the data set. And because it's Looker, it's really easy to just click in and get more information about what's going on. So we can see the top 10 busiest airports. We've got flights by state, flight count by airline, performance issues, delays, and so on. So really simple to use, great filtering capability, the ability to come in here and see more about the data, and a very simple and fast interface. If you think about it here, Looker's running in the cloud against our Google warehouse running in the cloud, and it's returning these results in well under sub-second timing. The last part of the integrations platform is that Actian provides a bunch of templates that allows you to do standard data load capability. Functions like if you wanted to take your Salesforce account history data and load that into Avalanche, or if you had a Parquet file sitting on S3, or you wanted to use Kafka, we've got these templates pre-configured, and you can just plug in your values, and you can schedule these jobs to run at any point in time, and really simple again to use and just run these configurations. How have you seen customers' needs evolve over the past few years?
Yeah, no,
particularly with analytics, because that's where I'm really focused. Yeah.
Well, I think just to summarize this, Emma, I think if you looked at cloud 10 years ago when things were just getting started, or even 5 years ago, a lot of it was about using IaaS, right? I have my ERP on premise and maybe a data mart associated with it. How do I move that to the cloud? And how do I migrate that workload? What I think the evolution that has happened is these explosion of new use cases that companies are now trying to do with analytics in the cloud. Like, I'm in a manufacturing company, how do I do predictive maintenance in the cloud? If I'm a gaming company, I have this user session data of when my users left the game. How do I use that to do micro segmented audience targeting using that data? So it's just new use cases that are more sort of around innovation rather than migration, I think. Well, actually, let me ask you, how do you see this going forward? If you had a crystal ball looked at 5-10 years down the road, what do you think the future would be specifically for cloud data warehousing?
Hey, so if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be sitting at home right now, locked in because of a quarantine. But no, I do find that with what has happened with COVID, what we're seeing is an acceleration of the move to the cloud. And so whereas previously we saw a lot of interest in Actian's cloud offerings from companies that were using hardware appliances for analytics, so the likes of Teradata and
Yeah.
Netezza and Exadata, and they were reaching capacity or end of life of those appliances, and they were looking for an alternative. Now we're seeing a rush of people that want to abandon the more traditional data center for deployment of their technologies, and they're looking to move to the cloud. Not all data is ready to move to the cloud today. Some companies will have concerns around security, and certainly those industries that are very strictly regulated that want to keep their data on premises. And I'm sorry, their core data on premises, and they may have things like marketing campaigns that they're happy to run in the cloud. And so being able to support a hybrid deployment of data, I think becomes increasingly important as we move forward. And because data sets that can move to the cloud or applications that are going to be naturally born in the cloud, it makes sense to analyze that data in the cloud. The cost of doing it is very efficient. It's also the convenience, right? You can spin up additional capacity as you need it and then spin it down again when you don't need it anymore. And so one of the things that we love about working with Google Cloud is this whole containerization that we've done for GKE deployment, and the fact that we can use Anthos then to push that into an on-premises data center for those customers that want to run both on-premises and cloud is fantastic. And then as we deploy, we love Google and it gives us superior performance. But if the customer for some reason has certain applications that are running in Azure, that are running in AWS, and we also have the ability to push through to those environments as well, because of the way this has been architected. So I see the future as very much hybrid and divergent. I think the ability to use the same technology across all of those different deployment platforms is very important, and then the ability to have a unifying view into that data set, right? So that regardless of where the data lives, when you go into your Looker dashboard, for instance, you should be able to access that data as though it's a single database, even though the where it lives might be distributed. And things like the high-speed network that's provided as part of Google Cloud facilitates that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I had a question for you then. What makes cloud fundamentally transformative from your perspective?
There's a lot I could share on that topic, but I like to talk about two things, specifically when it comes to analytics and data warehousing. The first one you kind of touched upon, which is now customers don't want to be boxed into traditional appliances, but they're looking for the elasticity and scale that cloud provides, almost the infinite scale that you get from a global computer. But the second thing I would probably want to highlight, which often gets overlooked, is this almost instant access to best of breed services, hundreds of best of breed services in the cloud. Whether it's from Google, first party services, or from our partners like Actian. If I have like millions of images, I want to label them, I could write 10 lines of code and use the Vision API. I could use Actian or a different product from our ecosystem. That instant access just speeds up innovation, which I think is part of the power of cloud.